Hi everyone. So, in today's video, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. If we've noticed the landmark judgments that have been coming till 2024, the court has had only to deal with questions regarding intellectual property protection alone. So, when technological advancements started facing them, that came somewhat later in 2024 when the situation became too complex. So until then they only had to address questions in IP law in relation to technical contribution or originality or authorship or inventorship or technical contribution, and then decide on the patentability or the copyrightability of that invention. But what happened as the digital age grew and as AI developed a market for itself, it became very clear that certain kind of concepts under AI were too complex to understand. For example, it was not a very distinct and clear path that was charted out by the AI, which courts could consider to be patentable or non-patentable. So it was not very direct or very clear as to how to classify them. So there have been many cases of such kind. One such case which was settled in the Madras High Court is basically the IDEMIA precedent. So in the IDEMIA case versus the Controller General of Patents, what typically happened was they had to decide as to whether to give algorithms, whether to give an algorithm patentability under the patent or as per the patent law, or whether to apply the blanket exclusion of patentability under section 3K of the patent law. Or the Patent Act, because in this particular case, you need to understand the science behind it. The question was, how much does it technically contribute, and is there a technical effect that is actually involved in the invention, in that particular invention. So now if you look at the scientific part of the invention, this is one of the landmark rulings, and the invention basically deals with encryption. So for example, there was a timing attack, or there was an attack on the timing of the cryptographic operations. So basically what this algorithm did was, it changed the timing of the attack on these cryptographic processes, and because it changed the timing of the attack on the cryptographic processes, the process of encryption became much easier. So that is how it technically contributed. So it incorporated certain simplified elliptical curves and formed a constant time encryption process. So this invention demonstrated a substantial technical effect which improved, or which made it easier for the public to comprehend by leaps and bounds. So this effective technical contribution was recognized by the Madras High Court, and although it contained an algorithm and used an algorithm to do so, they felt that you cannot put the blanket exclusion of section 3K and just say that it is non-patentable under section 3K of the Patent Act, Indian Patent Act. So that was one landmark decision, because till then algorithms or software programs were not patentable. And even till date, if you go by the Patent Bear Act, they are not patentable. But one such different case, or a rare case which is basically involving such a technical effect or a contribution which basically changed the way we perceive the AI system, or which made our lives easier, was something to be noted. And the same applied to the BlackBerry paradigm as well, where certain, in that particular BlackBerry case, the claims which came to light were purely towards instructional sequences, which were generally non-patentable algorithms which fell under again section 3K. So in the second case, it was however demonstrated that the software implementation within the claims could however overcome the non-patentability and demonstrate the technically enhanced effect which was responsible for the system's functionality. So therefore again 3K cannot be blindly applied in this particular case, because the algorithm that was used, it specifically contributed to the credible technical effects in the system, generating the effective computer functioning. So, and then there were many such cases which came down the lane which followed the same approach. So, the landmark case was the IDEMIA case, which basically set the precedent for the cases that followed with regard to algorithms and in AI systems. So, now comes one of the very most important cases, but before that, let us study the approaches adopted by several other jurisdictions when it comes to AI. So, the most familiar one is the European AI Act. So, European Union's AI Act is somewhat, it follows a very, very rigid approach. So, it doesn't allow AI to easily sort of pierce through their very well knit legislation that they have. And while other jurisdictions such as US and several other countries, they make it a little permissive and a little relaxed for cases where they could see a prominent technical effect with the help of AI in several machines. So EU came up with this GDPR guidelines, or they also came up with certain mandates in their Article 53 regarding GPAI providers, which had to comply with certain existing copyright laws. And when it came to text and data mining exceptions under the copyright directives. So this kind of a regulatory framework they felt had to have transparency, complete transparency in training the AI data sets. So it mandated that the providers publish a detailed summary of the content which is used for training the AI data sets. So that was basically the least that they could ask for from the AI providers, general purpose AI providers. So it followed quite a strict approach despite the landmark judgments that had already come out by then regarding the involvement of AI. So Europe's approach was more or less quite well knit and quite rigid. So, however, the US was more considerate, and it was very much willing to accommodate all of this under the fair use doctrine provision. So, under the fair use doctrine provision, it was very much willing to consider all of this and put it under the ambit of fair use. So, wherever an AI is involved for teaching or research purpose, or even in cases where the AI was found to be useful for mankind, in whichever sector he was working in, if it was found to technically contribute or have a substantial technical effect in that particular area, and it was bound to give a comprehensive copyright compliance requirement, they felt that it could fall under the fair use. This advantage was not given by Europe as a jurisdiction. So now coming to the most famous personality rights and how to protect a human persona was the Arijit Singh case. So the Arijit Singh landmark case is basically Arijit Singh versus Codable Ventures LLP. So this was regarding protection of the comprehensive digital persona. So this was a Bombay High Court decision. In this particular case, Arijit Singh, who is one of the famous singers who has sang a number of Bollywood songs, he basically he has a very unique voice, a unique rhythm, and a unique singing tone, unique mannerisms, unique vocals, unique way of expressing his song, his expressions, his voice, what he wears, how he presents himself, his facial expressions, the way he holds his mic, the way he connects with the audience. All of this is very crucially linked to his persona. Now, in this particular case, we had to be very careful as to not allow the AI to misuse his personality rights. So, therefore, Justice R. Chagla's interim order in this particular case prohibited multiple entries from using Singh's voice, name, and personality without the consent of Mr. Arijit Singh through an AI voice cloning technology. So they were after his voice because he had such a great voice, which was very appealing to the audience. Somewhere someone wanted to use his voice. So the court's ruling recognized that these celebrities in particular, they have a persona or an aura of their own when they go and perform at live concerts, or for example when they go to recording studios and when they perform a particular song. So they basically get rights over that particular way in which they perform that particular song, the emotions they bring to the song, the way they express themselves emotionally when it comes to the song. So what shocks the conscience of the court is there are certain AI tools who, without taking consent or permission, are basically they take advantage or they exploit the vulnerability of this unauthorized content. So basically this AI content itself, which is unauthorized, what it does is it states that I am going to use this celebrity's features or emotions in such a manner without his consent, knowing that he is vulnerable, to generate content of my own which almost resembles the entire persona of Arjit Singh. So tomorrow, if someone is hearing a particular song and it's an Arjit Singh song, no one can really tell between who is the original singer and who is actually, which is a product of AI. So his whole personality somewhere gets stolen in the process. So traditional attributes like even his name, his age, his image, his vocal styles, his arrangement, the techniques he follows, the interpretation and the mannerisms, all of them are copied. So therefore the Bombay High Court's order, which was given in this case, was provided unprecedented specificity in defining protectable personality rights in the particular area. So this basically extended to all his vocal styles and vocal techniques. Whatever mannerisms, arrangements, interpretations, singing, his signature patterns, etc., whatever it might be, had complete. So it put a complete cover over all the rights that belong to him and even his subtle personality traits. So no AI technology could come there and exploit any of these rights under the traditional legal frameworks which were laid down under a particular law. So this is a very, very important case, and it poses a very high risk for which certain safety regulations had to be drawn by the international framework development which participated in regulating the AI, which was the need of the hour and which is also even now the need of the hour. So the Singh case occurred with broader international context because he almost became a global persona. So the Council of European Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights, they signed an agreement sometime in 2024 where it was an internationally binding treaty specifically addressing the impact that AI had on humans' rights. So the convention basically required all the signatories to this particular agreement to implement measures and safety systems and regulatory protocols to inspect the AI systems and respect the human dignity, persona and their individual privacy and autonomy and their data protection. So the convention introduced such novel regulatory systems called regulatory sandboxes for carrying out very safe AI experimentation while maintaining a rigorous oversight over the high-risk AI systems. So almost all countries recognize that AI is posing a huge risk to the fundamental rights which are possessed by these AI systems, and hence they believed that high level of scrutiny was involved in creating a risk-based framework for AI governance. So hence the creation of this international guidelines or frameworks, which were first to be established in the Singh case because he fought for his personality rights protection. So now coming to the larger space, the EU AI Act, which came into being. So European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act was needed very much at this point in time because it had risk-based approaches to governing the AI. So it could categorize the risk-based approaches in terms of high-risk systems and low-risk systems. So how did it categorize this? So first is biometric regulation, which is very important because that wholly and solely belongs to you. So one is biometric categorization because it's based on very sensitive characteristics. Second is your emotional regulation in workplaces, schools, etc. And third is your social scoring. So these three things become essentially important to be protected as rights. And then an actor's or any other individual's personality rights protection operates through multiple mechanisms. So this is also a high risk AI system which has to undergo risk improvement or assessment and multiple appropriate fundamental rights safeguards over a period of time until it acquires importance under the garb of the human oversight. So throughout the AI system development, deployment and oversight and operation, it has to be ensured that the automated decision-making processes should maintain human accountability at all times. So for this, they have to come up with a comprehensive framework or an approach to protect the personality rights of that particular artist. So that is when came in the picture GDPR integration and enhanced data protection. So while EU on one hand was very strict and rigid about the kind of system to be implemented when it came to safety risks that were posed by the AI, there were also other monitors or other factors which had to be taken into consideration. For example, if a particular person is putting in his profile information or personal information, is uploading it in a site which has AI algorithms, now this AI tool could misuse this kind of information. So for that very purpose, it is important to rectify and erase that particular information which has been uploaded on that particular site. So this can be done only with the help of General Data Protection Regulation, which is also known as the GDPR. So now once this kind of information is erased, you really don't know whether it has been erased completely. So for this particular purpose, it is important to know. It is important to enforce certain guidelines and know exactly whether this data which has been uploaded by them has been rectified and erased or not. So instead of revealing your personal details as to who you are, what can be done is there is a process called pseudonymization or anonymization. So this is a process by which you have the access control over the personal data that you upload online. So this will also maintain the system functionality. It will control and regulate your data, but only to a certain extent. So the AI machines and systems wouldn't be able to identify you or would not be able to connect or associate the data with you. So whatever you contribute, even if you train your AI models on certain data sets which have been picked up from elsewhere, other humans or other personality traits which belong to that human would never be exposed to the data which has been collected by him, from him, like his facial features, like his voice, like his sound, like his eyes, nose, lips, whatever it could be. And it won't be traced back to you saying that this is the character from whom I withdrew all the information. So that demarcation becomes very clear through this medium. So that is why they have introduced these kind of protocols. So all of this falls under basically data privacy. It gives complete privacy and protection to the personal details which are very, very private to the user, who basically uploads content on websites thinking it will be protected. But since the digital age has gone beyond us, and with the advent of the AI, it has become even more complex to understand the way models are trained on data sets like large language model, etc. And so therefore, to prevent those data sets which you provide, wherein information about you is provided, it is important to remove certain content, or it is important to remove your name, your details, your addresses, your email IDs, your contact details, your location details, your physical appearances, etc., there is this process called pseudonymization or anonymization which is done. Now, there is a global convergence and divergence where there are comparative judicial approaches which are basically followed. So this also comes back to what I said. US and, for example, the Beijing Internet Court, where I discussed one of the Chinese cases in my previous videos, they follow a more relaxed approach where they believe AI generated content can be given protection, copyright protection. For example, if it's an AI generated imagery. Whereas in courts of the EU, if there is an AI generated content claiming copyright protection, they really scrutinize that content over and over again before granting protection to the copyright. So it cannot be easily obtained. So that is why the protocols and rules in various countries vary depending upon the legal regulations in that country. So if you ask for my personal opinion, I would adopt the EU approach, and I would also would like to generalize that approach and have one approach for the entire globe so that we are all aligned together when it comes to AI. But if each one wants to practice another law with regard to AI, we could get into a lot of problems and issues. And we cannot handle this technological monster that is in its inception. That is why it has become very important to have data governance and transparency requirements. Hence, Article 53 mandates that the providers create and regularly update the technical documentation about its model training, the versions of its model training, and what each version encodes, what each version contains and it's capable of doing, and which type of work becomes unauthorized usage and till what extent is it authorized usage, and also provides sufficient detailed summaries of such data and what are the limitations to training such data sets. So at what stage can this really get out of hand, and until what stage can this be regulated and controlled. So rights enforcement, technical challenges. So like I said, sometimes what the machine actually processes, it might not be able to rectify and erase it. So if one has access to a particular data, there may be multiple people using that data. So they could import that data, they could save that data, they could use that data for their own benefit, and this vulnerability is extremely high. So therefore the concept of machine unlearning, where you want to remove that data from the trained models or offer a technical solution or a right enforcement challenge, it becomes very, very difficult. So model retraining creates significant costs also and complexity barriers also. So basically this reflects an ongoing tension between how much is technically feasible to do, and the cost complications and the associated legal rights. So what does it hold for us in the future? So all the landmark judgments that we have seen so far are all complicated cases of utilizing algorithms or different forms of model AIs which require data sets to be trained on. So therefore it becomes very much important that on one side, if the models are being trained over a number of data sets and are growing rapidly, it is important to strengthen our regulatory development and our enforcement mechanisms also at par with that level, so that we can see some specific or counter the challenges which lie ahead of us, and navigating through these challenges will help us adopt the necessary protocols for AI technology and for their convenient regulation. So that is how we can basically chart a path in the future for AI. So on one hand, if we want to post certain content which appears very, very appealing and aesthetically attractive to us, on the other hand, it has all of these repercussions. So if we want to safely save our data and post our data such that it doesn't leak into the hands of a person who's going to exploit that data, then we must follow certain regulatory protocols. Once we abide by those protocols, then I think we are mostly safe. But the users should strictly abide by those protocols. So for instance, even today when I was using Meta, or even today when I was using other platforms like ChatGPT, etc., when I use some prompts to elicit certain responses from Meta, I could see that my prompts were so beautifully captured and translated into images that it was so appealing to me, and I could just not take my eyes off it. So that shows the power of technology today. Your imagination and just your creativity can be converted into something so dramatic and aesthetically and visually appealing that sky is the limit. So that is how it is, and therefore if one is in the creative space, while you can explore a lot of it online, one should also be careful as to where to draw boundaries and where to draw lines and how it should be regulated, considering the risks it carries along with it in one's mind. So think about it and let me know what your views are on this particular topic. Thank you.